In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came to be through him, and without him nothing came to be. What came to be through him was life, and this life was the light of the human race. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. A man named John was sent from God. He came for testimony, to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came to be through him, but the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, but his own people did not accept him. But to those who did accept him, he gave power to become children of God, to those who believe in his name, who were born not by natural generation, nor by human choice, nor by a man's decision, but of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us, and we saw his glory, the glory as of the Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. John testified to him and cried out, saying, "This was he of whom I said, the one who is coming after me ranks ahead of me, because he existed before me." From his fullness we have all received grace in place of grace. Because while the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. The only Son, God, who is at the Father's side, has revealed it. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Once again, Merry Christmas, everyone, and welcome to the Oratory. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I hope the New Year blesses you all. Today we hear these majestic words from the Gospel writer John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then it continues on beautifully, and then it sort of reaches a crescendo of sorts when he says that the Word dwelt among us. And this is what we celebrate. We celebrate Christmas. We celebrate the Word becoming flesh. We celebrate the incarnation, where God becomes one of us, becomes like us in human flesh, and lives a human life. And through that human life, the glory of God radiates forward. It becomes, in some sense, the glory of God, the inner life of God, the truth of God's love, becomes visible to us. And it becomes visible to us precisely through the sacred humanity of Christ. The sacred humanity that we see vulnerable and naked in the manger in Bethlehem. The sacred humanity that goes about preaching, confronting enemies, difficult, dangerous situations, gathering disciples, gaining intimacy with friends, being rejected by enemies, and then finally dying seemingly helplessly on a cross, laid in a tomb, but then risen triumphant. And now this human flesh, through which the mystery of God's love is proclaimed, is available to us in the Eucharist. The Eucharist still, in the Eucharist, the sacred humanity of Jesus is still teaching us, still imploring us to follow after him, to do as he does, to offer our humanity in sacrifice, to offer our humanity in generosity towards those around us. And that's the simple truth of the Word that was at the beginning. This line, in the beginning was the Word, it's a beautiful representation in a concise form of all that we hear about in the book of Genesis. You know, in that beautiful first chapter of the book of Genesis, the creation of the universe is described. And there, God just makes everything in an effortless way. God said, "Let there be light." God said, "Let there be the sea and the sky." God said, "Let there be day and night. Let there be the moon and the sun," etc., etc. By the mere utterance of the word, the creation of the world is effected. And all of its goodness is achieved through that word. And John just sort of condenses all of that and recapitulates it by saying, in the beginning was the Word, the source of goodness, the source of truth, the source of grace to those who receive it. And this is, John feels the need to revisit that beginning, to reassert it, to reassert that there was a great goodness. God was present in the beginning. His wisdom, His providence, His glory is the source of everything. And John wants to return to that beginning, at the beginning of his gospel. And surely he wants us to return to that beginning again and again. There's the promise made by John, by Christ himself, by all of the saints, that if we go back to the beginning, we will find in it a source of inspiration, a source of truth and grace, a source of strength that is not our own, a source of strength to move forward in life, to overcome difficulties and trials, to achieve great victories and triumphs. But we must have the courage, we must have the wisdom, we must have the simplicity to be faithful to that beginning. And we see we see that Christ, that God himself, maybe has more confidence in our beginning even than we do. That God takes to himself, God is eager to take to himself and to affirm the very thing, I think, that we are always trying to escape from. We're always fleeing from our weakness as human beings, always ashamed of it, always trying to keep it hidden. I think every strange ideology that human beings have ever run after, every erroneous philosophy that human beings have ever adopted, all have it at their heart a desire to abandon, negate, and flee from the human weakness that God runs towards, that God embraces in the incarnation. We see him embracing it again in that lowly manger in Bethlehem. And Christ does this. God does this in order to give us the courage to embrace our humanity, to go back to the beginning, to believe in the goodness that God sowed into us at our creation. There are countless things that might prompt us to doubt our goodness. Our own faults and failures, the disorder we see in the world. In that beautiful hymn, O Come, Emmanuel, which we sing all through Advent, the last verse talks about, there's a beautiful, desperate plea sent up to God. May soon our sad divisions cease. And those sad divisions could be a cause of doubting goodness. And that, undoubtedly, that prompts people to doubt the goodness of humanity, to doubt the goodness of the world, to doubt that there could be a good God in heaven looking down upon us and eager to bless us. But Christ is wiser than that. And his counsel, his mighty counsel, is always that we believe in the goodness of his word, always that we believe in the goodness of our beginning, and always that we return to that beginning as a source of blessing, a source of truth, a source of strength. This is what we're told to do again and again throughout the Christian life. You know, the T.S. Eliot, the great British poet, in one of his poems, he said, "In my beginning is my end." And it's a beautiful line. We think of beginnings and endings as opposite, but maybe they aren't so different as we suppose. No end is arrived at without making a beginning. And no beginning is properly made without an end in mind. So beginnings and endings always have a closer connection, I suppose, than we imagine. And it's by continually going back to the beginning, continually going back to the source, continually going back to Christ, going back to his humanity that we receive in the Eucharist, going back to his truth in prayer, going back to his life by reading the scriptures, by praying, by undertaking devotion, by going back to his witness, by his divine insistence on our goodness, the goodness of the world. By going back to the beginning, we are impelled forward in ever more fruitful ways. The Lord's counsel is so simple. Christ doesn't come to us with an abstract program. He doesn't come to us with a complex ideology. He simply tells us to love. He simply tells us to love him and to love each other. And to love ourselves in ways that are good, in ways that are consistent with loving him and loving our neighbor. Loving with a love that leaves no one behind. Loving with a love that makes of no one an instrument or a tool, a mere tool of selfish use. By returning to this continually, it sounds so simple, of course, until we reflect on the obstacles within us that bar the way to that. But again, Christ's message is simple. The message of Christmas is simple. We will find a strength to overcome those obstacles if we are continually faithful to our beginning. If we keep the beginning before our eyes, the mystery of his incarnation, the mystery of his love, the mystery of his message, the power of the luminous truth of all that he said and did. If we keep that before our eyes, his grace, his strength will make the rough way smooth.